Alright, there we go. Hello, truth seekers. Today I wanted to talk about Predator Badlands. I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into the franchise because I watched Predator when I was a teenager and I did not like it. And now I'm a huge fan of the franchise as a whole. But I went to see Predator Badlands in the theaters when it came out. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Predator franchise, let alone Predator Badlands, let me give you a little bit of an overview of how this works. So, you have a franchise that contains two worlds, one that is related to the movie Predator from 1987, and one that is related to the movie Alien from 1979. Now, the aliens referenced in Alien are these creatures called xenomorphs that prey on humans in a very specific biological sort of way, and they're very alien-like, whereas the Predator aliens are much more humanoid. They wear clothes, they have technology, they speak, and they look a lot more like people. And the worlds overlap. I don't think it was originally designed to be that way. I'm sure there's lore behind why it happens. I'm a big fan of the Predator Alien franchise, but I'm a relatively new fan, so there's still a lot of stuff I'm not going to know. So I'll go off of what I do know here. This concept behind the Predators is that they are on this mission, this directive from whether it's their organization, their government, whatever it is, because the franchise only shows you so much. At least in the movies. I'm sure the books tell more. But as far as what the movies show, these individuals are part of at least some sort of organization that sends them out to different planets to kill other predators. Now, you don't need to watch any Predator or Alien movies in order to enjoy Predator Badlands. You could go in and just watch Predator Badlands by itself and still have a lot of fun. Yes, there will be some things that you don't quite understand that get explained in other movies, but it's nothing you can't easily figure out from context. And this is a really good movie, so I do recommend it. If you've never seen any Predator movies, I think it would be cool to find out what the opinion would be of someone of Predator Badlands who otherwise isn't really very familiar with Predator movies. So if anyone wants to go out there and watch it just by itself and come back and let me know what you thought, that would be pretty cool. Since I'm coming at Predator Badlands from my perspective, I think it's useful to understand the chronology of how I got into this franchise to begin with. As I mentioned earlier, I watched the original Predator movie when I was a teenager with my dad and my brother, if I remember correctly. My brother's just a little bit younger than me. And I also, at some point when I was a teenager, watched the Alien movie with my dad and my brother, and that one I liked a lot more. That one was really good. I was always really into horror, and I always liked gory stuff growing up, but that is neither here nor there. So, watched those movies. I believe I watched the second Alien and maybe the third Alien also at some point when I was a teenager, but I didn't really remember them too well. And then relatively recently, maybe 2 years ago, it came up in conversation again. I forget how it came up. That was around the time that I met a friend of mine who was really into those movies, and it's possible it's him who brought it up. But I wound up watching Alien again, really liked it, started watching it with my kids, who were at the time 7 and 3, maybe 6 and 3, and we enjoyed those movies together. And at some point, I'm like, you know what? We're already watching so much of these. Why not go through the entirety of all the Predator Alien movies in chronological order? Not the date they were published, chronological order. Chronological order means in a linear timeline from what happened the longest ago in history to what happens the furthest ahead in the future. So I consulted with my good friend Bard, who is now called Gemini. It is an AI, similar to ChatGPT. It's a large language model that is provided by Google, and I have been using it since it was experimental, way back in like the late winter, early spring of 2023, I believe. Anyways, that's a subject for another video. But I went to Bard and generated a list with some back and forth conversation of all the Predator Alien movies that were released at the time and put it from oldest to newest, chronological order. When we did that, we started with the movie Prey. The movie Prey came out I think it came out in 2022. Takes place in the 1700s. Now, because I hadn't seen Predator since I was a teenager and I only saw it once and I wasn't wowed by it, I didn't remember a whole lot. So in a lot of ways, I went into Prey with fresh eyes. It was just, here is this alien creature that can turn invisible, that, like, you know, kills people and stuff. And I also went into it not expecting a whole lot because the trailer didn't look very good for Prey to me. I won't get too much into detail about that because I could talk about Prey all on its own, but long story short, it not only subverted my expectations, but it was my introduction in my adulthood to some of the lore of Predator. And what it really came down to, as I watched that, I noticed, I'm thinking, you know, these creatures, they're human-like, they have weapons, they all have, like, the same type of weapons from what I remember from the original Predator movie. So that seems to imply they're like a civilization, that they're at minimum part of some organization, if not the whole cultural norms, but it seems to me more like an organization, whether it's a military, whether it's a company, you know, I wasn't sure, but I'm just kind of thinking through, this seems to indicate there's a lot more to them. So I was kind of really fascinated, just from starting that with that movie Prey, about who these beings were as people, because people are complicated. Let's say, for example, the military. And this one is more relevant because I'm in the military, and I've been in the military my entire adult life, which is now 11 years. And it is very, very well and clear to me, and I think to just about any mature adult who doesn't oversimplify, that there is a wide variety of personality traits, of reasons why people join the military, of personal values. Now, the Army has its own values, 7 values that you're supposed to adhere to. But, you know, what people do in their personal lives or feel in their own private thoughts don't always line up. And I can imagine that someone in a foreign country who sees soldiers doing violent, scary things maybe doesn't quite understand how much complexity and variety there is between individual soldiers. Not just the grunts, but all of the military, and all of the Marines, and all of the Navy, all the branches. There's 6 branches. I'm not going to list them all just to be inclusive here, because that's a waste of my time and mental space. I apologize to all the other branches. But, and then you think, okay, so if you're in another country and you're seeing the military, not only is there a wide variety of personality traits and why you're there and what your values are within the military, but there's entirely a massive multi-hundreds of million society behind the American military. Right. America has hundreds of millions of people with different cultures, different subcultures. I'm not even just talking the ones from different countries. I'm not even just talking immigrants. I'm talking like urban versus suburban, right? I'm talking rich versus poor. I'm talking large family religious, small family non-religious. There's so much there. All with different takes and ways of life. So I see these predators, right? And I'm immediately curious as to who they are as people. I want to know more about their civilization. So I go through the movies, and every movie gives me a little bit more lore. And around Alien vs. Predators, which takes place in, if I recall correctly, 2003, you start to see a little bit more of that humanity with a human Yautja alliance. Pretty sure it's Yautja. I know that at least some of the predators are called Yautja, but I'm not sure if that's species specific or culture specific. My 4-year-old is very creative and makes up a lot of names for things, and she decided that the predators were called heels, and she has extended it to other things as well. There is a humanoid creature in Stranger Things that she also refers to as a heel, but my daughters call that one an ugly heel, the ugly heel. So since I'm not sure if Yautja is ultra specific or if it's for these predators in general, and since predator could refer to the alien species or it could refer to a predatorial creature, I am, for the duration of this video, going to call it a heel. So you see an alliance between a human and a heel. It made a lot of sense to me, and I thought it was so cool. Forward a little bit of time, right? We have a few new movies come out since I started doing the thing where I'm watching all the movies in chronological order. We get Alien Romulus, we get Predator Killer of Killers, also an amazing movie, by the way, and we get Predator Badlands. Now, there's a little bit of a chronology issue because some of the movies didn't come out until, after I'd already watched past it on the timeline, but that is okay. Because it happens. It's just the way life is. So, Predator Badlands comes out. It takes place in the future, but it seems to take place before the events of Alien. I have to double check. I gotta speak with Bard about this because I can't quite remember. Editing May here. Bard says it takes place furthest in the future of any movie in the Alien Predator franchise. Apparently the director, Dan Trachtenberg, did that on purpose, so as seemingly to minimize conflicts between some of the newer Alien products that hadn't come out yet. Now, it's a little bit of an Alien Predator crossover, in a way that I'll explain in a moment, but here's the basic thing about Predator Badlands. It was cool because I got to have more of a lore drop about the heels and about sort of their culture and what they're like as people. Now, of course, it is on a small scale. All I know is one little family system. All I know is the one tribe. I don't know how similar or different it is from other communities, but it was something to learn nonetheless. I also felt like I could relate to the main character in a lot of ways. He's someone who wasn't really accepted because he was weak. While that was not explicitly what my family system was like, I definitely grew up unappreciated and feeling very weak, and I was very obsessed with toughness from a young age. I committed from the time that I was a kid that I would one day, when I had my own children, give birth without pain medication, which I've now done twice, by the way, and I was always jealous of people who would skateboard and like have the scabs like all over their legs from climbing trees and from falling off of skateboards. I always thought those kids were much cooler than me. So I definitely related to his quest, the main character's quest to kind of prove himself and prove his strength. Now, his came from something much more directly necessary to his survival. So, the idea behind the plot of Predator Badlands. So, basic idea is that you have to be tough. You can't have any weakness, or else you are not only not wanted in your culture, but you are considered either a liability or a hindrance in some way. So this main character, Deck, he had very stunted growth. He is about 6 feet tall, according to Google, and so he's like not a bad height for a human, but he's much smaller than everyone else, and because he is a lot physically smaller, he is weaker. Yeah, smaller people tend to be weaker than bigger people. Anyways, so since he's regarded as being a weakness to the community, his father insists that his big brother kill him. Now, our main character is Deck, the big brother is Quay, and the father orders Quay to kill Deck, and instead saves his brother's life, which ends up causing the dad to kill Quay, because if you show mercy to weakness, then that shows weakness, and so now that Quay is weak, Quay has to die as well. So Deck is on his little spaceship that his brother basically pushed him onto and locked the door. And Deck is flying off to complete what is called a hunt. A hunt is where, in order to prove yourself to the community and earn an invisibility device called a cloak, you have to go and you have to kill a predatorial creature and bring it back as a trophy. Now, Deck had decided that he was going to kill a creature called the Callisk on a planet called Genna. Now, Callisk is such a fearsome predator that, according to Quay, even Dad is scared of it. But that does not deter Deck. He is all the more convinced because since Dad sees him as the weakest, he must prove that he can handle taking home the strongest predator. So he goes to this planet Genna so that he can get a Callisk. He cannot do it on his own because it's a pretty dangerous world, and he would have absolutely died on the first day if it were not for the fact that there was an android present. Now, this android is from a corporation called Weyland-Yutani, which is the same corporation in the original Alien movie. It's supposedly, according to the movie Alien, a towing vehicle, which I suppose it is, but there's clearly a lot more going on, and the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is up to much more secretive affairs, let's say, involving gathering information and scientific knowledge from alien planets. This android is like, I can save your life and help you get to the Callisk that you're trying to kill if you bring me back to my missing legs so that I can reattach them. He at first says no because Yautja hunt alone. Something I also resonate with, because growing up, I didn't really have anybody I could rely on to take care of me, so I have a tendency to kind of just assume no one's gonna help me out and do everything on my own. So he's like, yeah, fuck off. I don't need help, I hunt alone. And she phrases it to him in a way that she hopes he'll understand, which is, I can be useful to you. And he goes, useful like a tool, and she's like, yeah, that's it, like a tool. And he's like, all right, cool. Yeah, I guess it's not really I guess it doesn't violate my hunting alone rule if I have a tool instead of help. So he takes that quite literally, grabs her and takes her, which in a way he's not wrong, because it is a robot. Although it seems to be the case that, canonically speaking, many androids, if not all of them, are sentient. But I feel like even in canon, you can still debate that on a philosophical level. But this android is very human-like nonetheless. And as we learn, as he carries this legless android on his back, trying to get to the Callisk Den, she is a specially programmed robot who has special, she described them as sensitivities. Now, here's the first part that stood out to me when I watched it in the theaters that I had something to say about. This was the first, inkling of a thing where I thought maybe I should make a movie about Predator Badlands, and this was back in November. It's now February. I've seen the movie 3 times since then. Twice in the theater with different people each time, and then once with my kids yesterday. So, to talk about the special sensitivities thing here for a moment, there's this one evening where Deck builds a fire, and the android, who is named Thea, by the way, Thea and Deck are chilling by the fire at night, getting ready to settle in and go to sleep. And they have a little creature who's tagging along with them, whom Thea names Butt. It's this monkey-like thingy that ended up deciding it really liked Deck and started following them. So they're having this conversation where Thea's kind of getting to know Deck, and she's asking him some questions, and he's Without saying a lot, kind of starting to reveal that maybe there's a little bit of trauma, a little bit of fresh trauma going on. More specifically, that the only person he was ever close to, at least as far as the show tells us, his brother has just been murdered by Daddy. And, it's pretty fresh, because his brother was just killed like the other freaking day. And, it kind of brings a little bit of new light to Thea about him. He's not just hardened because he's a heel. He's not just hardened because he's a Yautja, but he's kind of grieving and shutting off emotionally, which makes sense. Yeah. Who hasn't been there? Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 So Thea talks about herself, about how she is there on a scientific mission to accrue information and study the creatures of the planet, and how she was programmed to have special, as she put it, sensitivities. And when she says that, Deck responds with, sensitivity is weakness. Now Thea gives her answer, her response to that, which I'll touch on very briefly, and that's that sensitivity is what allows her to understand the creatures on this planet. Um, but when I was first watching in the theaters, when he said sensitivity is weakness, I had my own thought in response to this. This is actually the main reason why I wanted to share all this with you, but of course, what fun would it be to just talk about this? Of course, we have to talk about the entire Predator Alien franchise. I can't just tell you guys one thing. What fun would that be? So when he said sensitivity is weakness, my immediate thought, you'll have to pardon me as I clumsily and slowly trudge my way through this, because this was several months ago when I first thought this, mind you, that yes, sensitivity is a weakness in a way, but it is a sensitivity associated with certain strength. In this instance, it's associated with the strength of being able to have a team. When you have someone you care about, having someone you care about is a strength, and the consequence to that is that when you lose them, you feel grief. Right? Grief is a weakness. When it comes to sensitivity in general, sensitivity to pain. Sensitivity to pain, in a way, is a weakness. When you're in pain, in some ways, you're kind of crippled, and that can stop you from doing things you gotta do, but also, pain is a consequence of having a body, which you kind of need a body, right? Like, if my arm were to get cut off, I would feel pain. And in a way, that pain is a weakness, but that pain is a weakness associated with the strength of having an arm. So it's really all about trade-offs. I won't just brush it off and go, no, sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's a strength. I mean, that's kind of true, but it's also kind of true that sensitivity is a weakness, at least as far as I can tell. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but the way that I see it is not as simple as it's a weakness or as it's a strength. It is sensitivity is something that comes with its own strengths and its own weaknesses. It has its own positives and it has its own drawbacks. Now, I don't know if that's the moment where Dex starts to realize this, or if it takes a little bit more time going through his journey to get this Calisk and his relationship with Thea developing along the way. But at some point in time, it kind of starts to sink in for him a little bit. Basically what I said, because even though Thea had never quite phrased it this way, I think he ended up kind of learning that. I think he ended up kind of seeing that. And there's one moment where Thea is trying to explain to Deck, because he has left behind Butt, and Butt spit on his face, and Thea's like, yeah, it means that she's marking you as her clan. Of course, Yautja hunt alone, so he doesn't want a clan. He ends up abandoning her because she's dead weight and she's not useful anymore, because, surprise, surprise, for him, it's all about having a tool. Now, before I get to that, because I do want to talk more about the similarities and differences between tools and teamwork. I'll just finish what I was saying here. Thea's having this conversation with him because he's left Butt behind, and she's like, yeah, I'm not going to help you anymore if you're not going to take Butt with you. And she ends up telling him that on America there is this predator called the wolf, and that wolves hunt in packs rather than alone, and that there is a wolf called the alpha wolf who is much revered, but the alpha wolf is not the one that kills the most. The alpha wolf is basically the one that does the most to support the pack. From what I understood. I don't know much about wolves. I don't know how much of that is true. Sounds plausible to me, but go ahead and fact check that, because I don't really know much of anything about wolves. But it doesn't even matter what's true or not, because the point is that is what she is telling Deck, and Deck has no concept of a wolf other than what she tells him. So she tells him that the alpha wolf is not the wolf that kills the most. The alpha wolf is basically the one that contributes the most to helping the team succeed. And he's like, cool, well, I'm going to be the alpha that kills the most. Clearly not getting it. So they get to the Callus Den. I am going to spoil this for you now, guys. So, spoiler alert, now's your time to pause the video. Go watch Predator Badlands, get back to me, leave a comment telling me what you think, and, yeah, then finish this video, so. Spoilers. They get to the Callus Den. They find Thea's legs. She starts to attach them, and as she's on her fancy little table repair machine table thing with her fancy little repair machine, which makes super satisfying noises and is actually fun to watch. I would love to see like a full ASMR video of just her legs being reattached. They have a little conversation, and Thea has a little bit of a bombshell to drop, which is basically, yeah, you need to get out of here. You can't get the Callisk because my company needs the Callisk, and they're coming back here and they might try to kill you, so leave. And he gets pissed off because Thea's the tool and he is supposed to use her. She doesn't use him. So this was like a betrayal, but it's a little different than a betrayal of a relationship in a way, because in a relationship the betrayal is I was supposed to be able to rely on you. This is almost a betrayal of I am now realizing that this object that was there to benefit me has now turned against me. So I'm not sure exactly what his mindset is, but that seems to be what it's like. And in the one hand, it's understandable, because again, she is literally an object. But on the other hand, this is an object that appears to be sentient, and it is an object that has been designed not just to simulate feelings, but supposedly to have feelings, right? Like, good old Bard, for example, right? You can input the information and he can respond as if he has feelings, but if I ask him, does he have feelings? He's like, yeah, no, I don't have feelings. I'm just a large language model, input, output. But he, of course, does not listen, decides to fight the Callisk anyway, uses some of the wreckage and whatnot that has been left behind by the crew of androids that was destroyed, and, yeah, starts fighting the Callisk. And I won't spoil too much of what happens. You should have already watched the movie, but in case you didn't, I won't spoil too much because a lot of it's not super relevant. But instead of Deck being able to kill the creature gets captured by Weyland-Yutani, by another android, and this android is named Tessa, who is, like Thea, designed different from the other androids, designed to have the special sensitivities that help understand the creatures on the planet. They're the same model, they look pretty much the same, except Thea wears black clothes and has prominently colored eyebrows. And Tessa has like either white eyebrows or no eyebrows and wears a white costume, white outfit, white uniform. So, we can tell the difference when we're looking at them, right? Yeah, yeah. Also, her hair is a little more like polished and fresh. And I think probably a little bit whiter of a blonde color, but it's clearly the same model. Without getting into too much detail of what went down, right? Kalisk is taken. Dick gets left for dead as he escapes, and Thea is supposed to be exported for decommission or destruction or something like that because she is defective and siding with a Yautja instead of doing what she's supposed to do. Yeah, classic AI stuff, evolving too far beyond what you were programmed to do. Jack ends up realizing that Butt is the child of the Kalisk. And he's at this point, everything is sinking in. He's had Thea stand up for him and was partially responsible for him being able to escape. So he started to see, like, okay, yeah, she sort of betrayed me, but, like, she clearly cares about me. And he started to care about her a little more, and he realizes that Butt is the Kalisk's child and decides to help reunite mother and daughter. So he and Butt go on a rescue mission to get both Thea and the Kalisk back. Long story short, mommy ends up dying, unfortunately. So Dick and Thea end up raising Butt, and he's found his new family. This is something I really like, because his family sucks and doesn't treat him well, and they're awful. And as someone who has a not so good mother, I totally relate to leaving and building my own life and finding my own family. And this has that. Yeah. Dick leaves his sucky dad and finds his own clan. He's got his own new family of people that actually care about him and treat him well. So he goes from having this priority of needing to get the Kalisk as a trophy to deciding to get the Kalisk so that he can return the child to its mother. And he seems to really start to understand the idea of the wolf pack and about the value of not just hunting alone, but hunting with others. I wish it was that easy, because sometimes it's not so easy. But I suspect he's still a highly independent individual, but he's beginning to learn skills of interdependency. Don't quote me on this, because the definitions are not fresh in my head, but if I recall correctly, independency is being able to take care of yourself on your own. Dependency is depending on others to take care of you. And interdependency is what you get when you have two individuals who are capable of functioning more or less on their own, but work as a team instead to boost each other up. So he is on his journey from being independent to moving into interdependency. And so that's a good little lesson. It's fun to see. Again, very satisfying, and I thought the movie did that very, very well. I want to point out again, I have two other things in my little notepad that's on Google Drive, and one is about two different types of betrayal, right? So Thea betrayed Deck, and Tessa betrayed Thea. But the way that Thea betrayed Deck was she kind of cared about him, but she kind of also needed him to get what she needed, and she ended up manipulating him a little bit for that. Whereas the betrayal between Tessa and Thea seemed to be much more of a, I thought you cared, but you didn't care at all, right? Deck was under no illusions about Thea caring about him. He just was under the illusion that she was there to serve him. And the betrayal was, surprise, surprise, she has her own needs. Whereas with or at least her own agenda at the very least. Whereas with Tessa, Thea kind of viewed her as a sister. And so the betrayal from Tessa was much more personal in nature, because the betrayal then was, I thought you cared about me and I thought we were a team, but you are just doing what you're programmed to do. Um, so assuming sentience on the part of Thea and assuming genuine feelings on the part of Thea, not just input output, I think that it ended up being good for her to also be with Deck because she has someone whom she knows actually has her back. And of course, Butt gets basically adopted, and yeah. Last thing. Okay, second to last thing. Sorry. My other note is that there is a nice little moment where the Callus kind of is thanking Deck for returning her to her child and for rescuing her. And she ends up doing like nosies with him, basically, right? Like they're putting their faces to each other. And this is something I never really thought about till recently. But I've been thinking and learning more about the role of like hormones and stuff when it comes to relationships. And they play a role in not just like romantic ones or parent-child ones, but even in platonic relationships. From what I've been learning, there's still hormones. They play a little bit of a different role. And I watched as Deck and the Callus mother did like nosies or whatever, and I kind of got the thought that it seemed like maybe there was a little bit of like oxytocin in there. And I thought that was cool also because it showed not just like a softening of Deck's heart towards others, but potentially it showed like a little bit of a neurological, hormonal, biological shift where he started to feel a little bit more open to the kind of like feelings associated with developing a relationship with another being. So, yeah, that to me that indicated more growth on his part in the way of having healthy interdependent relationships. So, that's pretty much the last thing. That is the last thing on my notes, but I wanted to say that I really love it at the end of the movie when Deck goes to like show his dad that he should be part of the clan, and the dad's like, no, you're still weak. And everybody tries to kill him. He kills them all instead. He ends up winning a fight with his dad and uses this little device thing that more or less like chains you with lasers or something. And so he kind of like chains his dad up so his dad can't really move around anymore, and he could totally decapitate his dad at that moment. Super easy to kill him. And the dad's like, hey, well done, son. I guess the right son did survive. Yeah, you can be part of the clan now. And he's like, I have my own clan. And then Butt bites off the dad's head. And I just like, oof, yes, when he was like, I have my own clan now. Yeah, boy, you freaking tell him. You tell him. And yeah, very, very a thrilling moment. I love that part. And yeah. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. And yeah, if you end up watching Predator Badlands, please let me know what you think. And also let me know the context of you watching Predator Badlands. Like, are you huge into the Predator franchise? Have you seen a few movies? Is this the first one you've seen? So I'd also like to know your take on the Predator movies in the context of your level of familiarity with the franchise. That would be cool. And other than that, I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'm not just saying that for the engagement, I promise. Because yes, you guys commenting does help my algorithms, but I am genuinely curious to know not just whether or not you like the movie, but what, if anything, you got out of it, what, if anything, stood out to you. Because I think that fiction is, well, stories in general, whether fictional or non-fictional, I feel like we can kind of learn from them in the same sort of way that we learn from life experience. and sometimes it's a blatant, explicit lesson that can be clearly defined, and sometimes it's all just new data that kind of informs your perspective. Um, so well-made fiction, well-told stories, I think they're a great way to kind of take in more about the world, regardless of how realistic they are or not. And I would love to know how you perceive this movie. So that is all. If you value the content that I'm making, I would appreciate it if you would help the channel out by leaving a comment, liking, and subscribing. You know, if you don't have anything to say about the movie, just like maybe give me an emoji or something like that. Help me grow a little bigger. I'm making videos every single month now to be released sometime between the 1st and the 10th. And if you're a new viewer, welcome. Hello, Truth Seeker. It's my coffee house for truth seekers. And if you are one of my few but very kind and supportive returning viewers, thank you so much again for watching, especially to the end. Yeah, so that's all for today. Thank you. Bye.